स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। Today our topic for discussion is Shankaracharya's contribution to spiritual psychology. Now, before we actually start this discussion, I shall give a brief introduction of this great ancient teacher whose teachings are being discussed here. Now, Shankaracharya is one of the most central figure in Hindu Vedantic tradition, perhaps even in Indian philosophy. Even the place where I'm standing right now, this Vedanta Society, which was founded by Swami Vivekananda, and who came to this country as a representative of Hinduism in 1893 to attend the Parliament of Religion in Chicago. What he did was, he was only giving a modern interpretation of the philosophical system of the spiritual philosophy, which was originally expounded by Shankaracharya as a compact philosophical system. So, if I give you a brief introduction or description of this wonderful man's life, you'll get a very interesting picture. He lived only for 32 years. And he became a monk when he was less than 7 years. And the books that he wrote, he had completed all those books by the year he was 16 years. And then for the later 16 years, he traveled all over Indian subcontinent. Remember, it was in 8th century AD. At that time, what we now call India or Indian subcontinent was much bigger. It included today's Afghanistan, today's Pakistan, today's Sri Lanka, today's Burma, all the way right up to Samarkand in the extreme north, up to Sri Lanka in the south, because there is small distance, about 20 kilometers of ocean, and in the extreme west, Burma, and extreme west up to the western frontiers of India, that is in the Arabian coast, and the northwestern area all the way up to Afghan-Persian border, Afghan-Iranian border. So it was almost double the size of today's India. And it traveled on this Indian subcontinent 4 times, preaching his philosophy. One may wonder, and I'm not the only one who is wondering, the person, in fact, the greatest summary or estimate, so to speak, of this unique man's philosophy and his contributions was made by an Irish lady who was the most important Western disciple of Swami Vivekananda, who is incidentally the founder of this Vedanta Society of Northern California, San Francisco, where we are standing. Her name was Sister Nivedita. Her original name, before she became a nun, her name was Miss Margaret Noble. She was born near Dublin in Ireland. She became impressed by the philosophy of Vivekananda, and he became a disciple, went to India. Remember, this was the later decades of 19th century and early decades of 20th century. Stayed there, studied Sanskrit, studied Indian philosophy, studied Indian spirituality. She makes a very interesting estimate of Shankaracharya. She at first gives a brief graphic description of his enormous contributions to philosophy, to monasticism. Remember what Vivekananda did what we now call Vedanta. This institution is called Vedanta Society. Vedanta is the name of the most exalted philosophical spiritual ideal of Hindu tradition. That Vedanta was established as a philosophical system, as a spiritual system by Shankaracharya. And she says, she concludes her 2-page estimate of Shankaracharya, this is a greatness that we can appreciate only from a distance, but can never understand. No exaggeration. It is not the statements of some traditional Hindu praising his own saint. No. It is coming from a lady, an Irish lady, who was almost a very revolutionary person, almost an agnostic, who questioned everything, who was impressed by the great Vivekananda, came to India, and then she interestingly gives a brief description of the different contributions of Shankaracharya. First, he is the founder of no less than 10 monastic orders. St. Francis of Assisi founded the Franciscan order, St. Dominic, Dominican order, Ignatius Loyola, the Jesuit order. Shankaracharya established 10 monastic orders. You go anywhere in India today, or in the Bay Area, wherever you find a Hindu monk with this cloth, he will belong to one of the 10 monastic orders established by this 16-year-old boy. Remember that. And then he's also the author of the most profound philosophical classics in Sanskrit. He established 4 monasteries in 4 distant corners of India. One very close to Indo-China border, extreme north. Other extreme south. Another close to the Arabian Sea. And another one close to the Bay of Bengal, extreme east, north, south and west. Badrinath, Sringeri, Puri, Dwaraka. And he didn't stop there. The most profound devotional poetry in Sanskrit language was written by this man who taught a philosophy which told us, you just be a good, great spiritual person, even without going to a temple, even without praying to a god, you can be spiritual. This is the essence of Advaita Vedanta. You should recognize the spark, the presence of the divine within everything and everyone. The whole creation is one spiritual family. Not only human beings, but even the whole animal kingdom. But the entire creation is a spiritual family. He said, if you cut a tree or if you cause deforestation, which will certainly result in diminished rainfall, can lead to famine, can lead to death. It is a violence against the divine presence within nature. So it is not that tree is God, or mountains are God, or oceans are gods. No. What he said is, trees, mountains, oceans, rivers and clouds, they are all part of one spiritual system. Remember, you should not misunderstand. He did not say the cloud is God or tree is God. No. What he said was, if you become a truly spiritual person, you should experience the presence of the divine in everything and everywhere. Now, and then, so he wrote this almost 118 very profound spiritual poems, spiritual poetry. He's the greatest devotional poet in Sanskrit literature. He's also the greatest name in Indian philosophical tradition. And again, he was debating with other philosophers who opposed his view, who always made a division between God and man, who always believed in performing some rituals just to acquire some selfish material ends. So he had to oppose, he has to contradict. He was always engaged in different debates and discussions with other philosophers. So his name was Shankaracharya. Now, Sister Nivedita, Miss Margaret, noble Irish lady, she gives a graphic description. The 10 monastic orders, the 4 monasteries, and then he installed hundreds of temples all over India. Wrote the most profound devotional poetry, is the exponent of the most profound transcendental philosophical system within Hindu tradition, and all that he did in 32 years. He walked all over Indian subcontinent, not just today's India, Indian subcontinent, 4 times. Even in today's Afghanistan, in fact, one of the cities in today's Afghanistan is called Kandahar. And it used to have an ancient Sanskrit name, Gandhara. It was actually a part of Sanskrit tradition, Vedic tradition. So even in that city, these Shankaracharya statues were excavated from ancient relics. So this is the general picture of Shankaracharya. And now the question is, what contribution he made to spiritual psychology? This is very interesting. I can just, to begin with, I will quote some of his own words. So I don't believe in giving a very second-hand, a very remote English exposition of an ancient system without any reference to the ancient Sanskrit words which he himself wrote, or at least about 13 centuries ago. So he says, Yogartasya eva yoga nivritto susthada tata dukkhatmakasya atmano dvaita prapanchopashame susthada. There is one word you may find, I shall explain this. Susthada means mental health, physical health. So his definition of mental health he discussed here. And he says, health is our natural property. A disease is coming from outside. So when you take medicine, when you go to a doctor, when you go through a procedure, what you are doing is, you are trying to remove an intruder, a virus, a bacteria, so that you can get back to your own natural state of health. So health is our natural state. Disease, an alien, something alien coming from outside. So when disease is removed, then the health, that's our natural state, is retained. It is not obtained, but it is retrieved. We get back our natural state. Now, what is this disease? Remember, this is analyzed from the perspective of spiritual psychology. So, if we can remain spiritually healthy, we can also become physically healthy. It doesn't mean that if you are a spiritually enlightened person, you will live for 1,000 years. No. The physical body will certainly go through these natural changes. It gets old, it falls sick, and it dies. It happens. In Hindu, Buddhist tradition, Vedantic tradition, it comes back because reincarnation or rebirth. Now, and he says, there is a way for us to come back to our own natural state. That is to get back to our own spiritual identity. And what are we? We are one divine reality. Not this body-mind complex, but something beyond, something behind, something that goes beyond this body, which is changing all the time. Mind, which is happy now, unhappy later. Or intellect, which is also changeable. So there is something within us. That's our real personality. That's our real identity. That's a real identity, if in your identity card. We call it Atman. So our true identity is Atman. False identity is this body, mind. So when we call, my name is John, what it means is, the physical body is called John. But the physical body is only one fragment, not the whole. rather an insignificant part of our identity. Behind us, behind this body-mind complex, there is Atman, the divine spark that is present not only in me, but present everywhere. Once we identify with true nature of ours, then what happens? We cannot hate anyone. We do not consider anyone as a stranger, as an alien, as somebody coming from outside. We are able to look at the entire creation as one spiritual family. So then you don't hate your neighbor because God will punish you, because you do not see anyone other than yourself. So your neighbor is nobody other than yourself. So by hurting your neighbor, by not loving your neighbor, you are hurting yourself. This idea behind. So in a way, it's called the spiritual universal humanism. It's called. This is the modern interpretation. Now the question arises. He gives some methods, some disciplines. So first, he says every spiritual seeker has to go through certain disciplines. And these disciplines are divided into two categories. One is, of course, in the Sanskrit language called Sadhana Chatuštaya, and the other one is Sarvana Mana Nididhyasana. I shall try to avoid the technical Sanskrit expressions at the present context. First thing we should do, what is that which really matters in our life? Body is important. The body is bound to disappear one day. Even if you live, even do exercise every day, if you eat exotic, organic food every day, still you cannot expect to live maybe maximum 100 years. You are a very happy person, lucky person if you live for 100 years. Still after 100 years, this body has to go away. So body is okay, it's important, it is necessary. Taking care of the body is very, very important. But we have something other than this physical body. That remains okay when you do exercise, when you eat good food. Because just as bad food makes our body sick, bad intellectual food, bad mental food, bad ideas, bad associations can also make us sick. Not only physically, but mentally. Bad ideas, bad book, bad associations, especially in this age of internet, just like toxic, poisonous food for the mind. So what it means is, once we recognize what is really that matters in life, and in Sanskrit it's called nitya, means eternal, the fundamental essential value, that's the root of everything. What is that which matters? And what are those things which are not irrelevant, but which are secondary? And then once we decide this, then we must hold on to that eternal spiritual value. For example, love, compassion, truth, living in harmony with nature, with everyone. These are certain eternal values. These are more important. Certain values related to transactional life, things that are related to everyday activities, which again are subject to change. They are not irrelevant, but they are not of an eternal nature. So they could be discarded, and we should hold on to these eternal spiritual values. This is the first discipline. The second discipline comes from the first one. That is, we must, as I mentioned, discard the irrelevant, and we must we must uphold the relevant, the eternal principle. For example, suppose our mind is tempting us. Do something and we can make money, or we can attain something, obtain some worldly achievement. But it could be hurting others and eventually harmful to us also at the end of the day. So when that happens, we must be able to discard that which presents itself as a means for accomplishing worldly enjoyment, worldly things, money, reputation, profit, all this. They are not irrelevant, but there is something much higher than that. So we must uphold the higher one and for the time being discard the secondary one. So it is called Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka Ihamutra Phalabhoga Viraga. Remember, I am trying to give you as non-technical an interpretation as possible. The third discipline is when you actually practice this respect and deference for some eternal spiritual value system, and when you develop this ability, the discerning wisdom to discard the peripheral, the empirical, the worldly things, then our mind develops certain qualities. That is, we become calm and quiet. We develop a kind of unique kind of mental, spiritual maturity, kind of spiritual common sense. We can always find, to give an example, suppose you are reading a thriller, let us say, some thriller, some, I know I'm not offending anyone, some books or movie script that actually full of violence, full of sensation. We may, if you are sitting waiting for a flight at the airport, it can help you because you cannot wait, you can easily pass off time. But on the other hand, it may agitate our mind. We are feeding our own mind with toxic, poisonous food. On the other hand, suppose you read, let's say, in the Western Christian context, I can give examples, some great parables, even if you don't believe in God, if you read some great parables from the Bible, or the Sermon on the Mount, or the Bhagavad Gita, the great spiritual text of Hindus, or even the Dhammapada, the Buddhist tradition, or any tradition, any ancient spiritual tradition, Jewish, Sufi, anything. When you read, and then at that time somebody comes and quarrels with you, you'll have a tendency, well, I don't have to worry about this one thing. You will come back to your book, you'll continue reading this spiritual book. But if those ideas can capture our mind, what happens? Our mind develops certain qualities, certain properties. An ability of discerning wisdom, an ability of self-restraint, sense control, inner satisfaction, inner contentment. It is called Samadhi Sharka Sampatti. Samadhama Uparaditi Diksha Shraddha Samadhanam. The ability to restrain our mind and senses, the ability to confront problems with a sense of self-restraint, and also the ability to persist and go for some higher pursuit in life. All these qualities will appeal to you if you are, even for the time being, reading some great book, or you are listening to some great ideas. These ideas will give us a kind of self-restraint, a higher discerning wisdom. And then mukshutvam, then we will have a strong desire to attain this higher spiritual value. And then we will try to pursue this path, reading books, listening to these ideas. We will start enjoying great spiritual associations. Association could be by reading books, by listening to ideas, or by discussing with spiritual teachers on higher spiritual values. These things will naturally be good food to the mind. Remember, good food to the mind is even more important than good food to the body. Good food to the body is important, but mostly in modern times when you buy something, GMO free, expiry date, all those things, that's wonderful. But there is another kind of food that we are sometimes we are consuming without any proper precaution. That is food for the mind. So good food to the mind is very important. And by associating with great ideas and contemplating on those great ideas, we will be feeding our mind with good food. So Shankaracharya says Sravanam, Manam, Nididhyasanam. These 7 disciplines he recognizes as very important for any spiritual person. Remember, this is a very general principle. You'll be surprised. Nowhere here do you find the teacher mentioning God. And this is something very interesting. This may be, even an agnostic cannot disagree with what I am talking about right now. Feeding the mind with good food, good ideas, is importance, is even more important than feeding the mind with good food, with the body with good food, because food for the mind is as important as food for the body. Then what happens is our emotions and feelings also begin to change. Shankaracharya makes a very interesting observation in his commentaries. And that is this. You know, what we eat is normally called food. The Sanskrit word is ahara. Aharati iti aharaka. What we eat is called food. Anything, sandwich or whatever you eat, it is food for the body. But he says, food is not only what you eat. Food it also includes what you consume mentally. Your thoughts are also your food. And thoughts are frequently caused or influenced by food. Even food, physical food can influence thoughts. It's very interesting. Subtle and gross impacts of what we eat. He is a very ahara shuddho, sattva shuddho, dhruvatri. In the Chandogya Upanishad statements and that. In the commentary he says, what we eat, the gross elements of what we eat goes to build up the body. Suppose we are going to an eating place, a restaurant, we eat food. It may be maybe a person with evil intention, maybe giving you, a man who is not necessarily the kind of person you like to associate with. He presenting you wonderful, hygienically prepared food. That will certainly help us physically. Because good food, hygienically prepared food, nutritious food, given to you by a person with a curse, somebody who hates you, will give you a very wonderful food, what you call in Western caviar, which of course I don't know anything about except the word, Let's say a 18-course dinner is served, but a person is evil intentions. He may be full of anger for you. Shankaracharya says that food will affect your mind. Why? It's very interesting. Because there is a transmission line between one person, one mind, another mind, which is invisible. The transmission line that is visible is somebody is putting a plate of food in front of you, you eat it. That is visible. That is gross. Sthula it is called. Sthula means gross, physically visible. You can experience physically. But the person's mind, his emotions, his feelings, and also his intentions, his general mindset, also will influence the food that is bringing to your table, he says. And then what happens? Your mind also will be polluted affected by the emotions and feelings of that person who is bringing you food. So he says, when we eat food, we should be careful about who is bringing, but then it is not possible. So, and then he makes a statement. But suppose you consider whatever you are eating, whoever may be bringing the food, from whatever source, whatever it is, if you consider that as part of the whole creation or existence, and if you always keep in mind everything in this world is pervaded by the divine spirit, Atman, called Brahman, Atman, these are words used in Vedanta. One divine presence, everything is coming from one divine source. So even good and bad, all these are pervaded by the divine. Once you keep this in mind, then the effect of, the negative effect of food brought to you by a person who may have a negative outlook in life, it will not affect you. So in the Gita, you can find a verse, Brahmarpanam Brahmahave Brahmapno Brahmanakudam Brahmaiva Tena Gandavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. We chant this every day before we eat our food or lunch or breakfast, whatever it is. Means what I am eating is pervaded by the divine. The wine I am eating, I am also pervaded by the divine. And this act of eating is also a divine act. So everything is given a spiritual orientation. The food we eat, we are the ones who are eating, and we are also pervaded by the divine. The act of eating food, the result of it, all these are given a spiritual orientation. Mentally you focus on this idea, everything is pervaded by one divine spark. This is an idea behind. Now, and another very interesting teaching that you find in Shankaracharya. It's a very, he says, very often, if we don't keep watch over our own mind, in what direction our mind goes, we can land in trouble. We can very easily understand many unpleasant, unfortunate things happening in the campuses in this country or anywhere else for the matter. People, youngsters, good people, very noble intentioned people, caught by wrong influences, wrong ideologies, wrong thought currents, suddenly become problematic people. A lot of terrible things are happening in modern times because of the IT. Internet is a great blessing, no doubt about it. Internet has helped us in so many different ways. Modern technology, modern science have helped us to improve our communication, our comfort level, has helped us to improve transportation, distribution system. All these are great blessings of science and technology. But in modern times, in this age of artificial intelligence and information technology, we are facing a problem. Even if you don't go anywhere, you sit in your own room, you open a computer or an iPhone, your mind can be connected to the most vicious forms of ideas, influences, negative ideologies, and so on. And that can affect our mind. As I mentioned earlier, there are toxic poison for the mind. Very often in the internet you find a lot of things which can only be called toxic poison for the human mind. So there is an interesting verse in his well-known book, Viveka Chudamani. The verse is very simple. I shall read it, but you don't have to worry about it if you don't know the meaning. I will explain it. Lakshachudam cheryadi chittameshad bahimukham sannibade tadastadaha pramadada prachuda keli kantugaha sopana panktu patido yathadatha. It's very interesting, Here life is compared to a staircase. Now think of a staircase. Suppose a youngster, young boy or young girl is playing with a football, whatever it is, on the top staircase, the top of the staircase. A child is playing with a ball, and a fall by mistake, pramadada prachuda keli kantuha, means by mistake the fall slips through his fingers and it falls on the top layer of the staircase. If the ball hits the top layer of the staircase, it doesn't stop there. It keeps falling down step by step till it reaches the rock bottom. The ball doesn't stop till it hits the rock bottom, the bottom of the floor of the staircase. Now, like that, if we don't keep watch over our own mind, if we don't keep watch over our own thoughts and emotions, and if we do not keep our mind always filled with good ideas, good spiritual ideas, ideas that that, that help us to manifest the good samskaras, the good tendencies which are already in us, ideas that are helpful to us. If we don't insist on feeding our mind with only positive ideas, with positive food, good food, then we are likely to fall. And once we, like the ball that slips through the fingers of the child who is playing in the top of the staircase, the ball doesn't stop. After hitting one staircase, it comes all the way down till it hits the floor, it doesn't stop. Like that, if we make one mistake, suppose in internet, we try to connect with some negative ideas. These ideas can prompt us into some wrong convictions, wrong actions. Because our mind is a bundle of conflicting samskaras, according to Vedanta tradition and according to Shankaracharya. Human mind can be compared to a bag which is full of, let's say, which full of tendencies, impressions, feelings, called samskaras in the yoga tradition. What are samskaras? Samskaras are deep impressions that lie accumulated in the mental system. And they are the resultant, they are the residual effects of our own actions. Actions not only from this life. Hinduism, Buddhism, all these Eastern traditions, they believe in the doctrine of law of karma, law of action, and doctrine of reincarnation, doctrine of rebirth. So whatever we do, its impact is not limited to the present. Its result can be spread over our whole life. Our memories, impressions and tendencies which are created by our actions, our past actions, keep influencing our actions again in future. And these memories come from previous life cycles also. So our mind is full of two types of tendencies, impressions. One, good qualities, good impressions, positive samskaras, positive tendencies. The other category, negative, destructive. How do we distinguish this? There's a simple test. Suppose you take a decision. This evening, I'm going to read some good book, not thrillers, not entertainers, but books and ideas which have a lasting positive effect on our life. According to your own traditions, cultural traditions. Even if you are an agnostic, still there are wonderful books from which you can gather good tendencies. If you are a believer in God, there are wonderful scriptures in all traditions. Of course, unfortunately, there are some books which are not so very wonderful also, which are of course not part of our discussion right now. But there are wonderful scriptural statements which ask you to do good things, to love everyone, to look upon the entire humanity as your own spiritual family, to hate no one, and to live in harmony and peace with everyone, to look upon the entire humanity as one spiritual family. Those ideas you take a decision. This evening or tomorrow morning I shall start reading this book. Or rather, tomorrow onwards, I shall pray at 7 o'clock in the morning. Or I shall meditate, practice meditation. Any of these, which are supposed to be helpful and healthy for the mind. When the time comes, your mind is not fully happy about your decision to meditate or to read a good book. Your mind tells you, oh, better not today, you can read tomorrow. Meditation, well, maybe today is not, I have some other things to do, I shall meditate tomorrow onwards. Today I shall watch Terminator 1, Terminator 2, Terminator 3. So our mind will have a tendency to do things which are very unhelpful, very harmful, not always very helpful, and a tendency not to do anything which is really helpful. So you can find our mind is not our best friend. A friend who tells you go and steal, that person is not your best friend. A friend who tells you don't steal is your best friend. So if a mind is happy, willing to cooperate, when you try to meditate, when you try to do good things, that mind is your best friend. But frequently our mind is not willing to cooperate when we sincerely, honestly try to do something good. So how to change that mind into a best friend? By physically engaging in good actions. Because good actions will produce good spiritual qualities. So the percentage, the quantity of positive tendencies in the mental system increases. And proportionately, the quantity of negative tendencies decreases. Percentage-wise, you have a larger percentage of positive tendencies and a lower percentage of negative tendencies. When this happens, mind begins to be friendly. This is a very, very important thing in mind. So Shankaracharya says, very interesting he says, no? Acharya Upadeshehi Samskritam Manaha Vedanta Sravane Karana means when our mind is refined, purified by having good food, by association with good persons, with good ideas, good tendencies, that mind naturally becomes a friendly mind. And that mind will help us in spiritual life. I mentioned earlier, at the very beginning, from a Vedantic perspective, there is a divine reality present in everyone. So one may very well ask the question, if there is a divine spark in everyone, if God is present in everyone as a divine reality, then why don't you find this globe is not inhabited by 8 billion Buddhas and Christs? You don't find that. There are many people who are certainly not like Buddhas or Christ, the opposite of it. So how do we explain this? So Vedanta will tell you, because of all the samskaras, tendencies, impressions that we are already accumulated in the mental system. When our mind has a higher percentage of negative tendencies, unspiritual tendencies, what happens is that divine presence within is not manifesting. It is full effulgence. When we try to do good actions, either at this physical level, even if we cannot meditate, if we go do some kind of good work with a sense of total unselfishness, it's very important. Some people will tell you, I want to meditate, and mind is not willing. As if meditation is the first step in spiritual life. Meditation is actually a very advanced step in spiritual life. People feel mind is not cooperating, mind is creating conflict when they try to meditate, just because they assume that meditation is the first step. No, it's wrong. The first step in spiritual life, to develop a tendency to do something good, something positive, something with a sense of total dedication. If you cannot meditate, you can perhaps, do some activity which is unselfish, not part of your own professional obligations. Go somewhere, help someone, or be part of a higher cause. There are organizations and institutions which do great things. When we become part of that, we are joining a flow, a blissful, invisible spiritual flow. And you find slowly our mind accumulates a lot of positive tendencies and impressions. That mind slowly develops the necessary qualities to pray and to meditate. This is a very important thing in life. So Shankaracharya says, a person should first of all develop a tendency to do something positive, something good, something noble. Whether, even if you don't believe in God, you can do that. It's a very interesting. One of the uniqueness of this Shankaracharya system is he doesn't divide humanity into believers and non-believers. He is not threatening anyone with hellfire. Those who are not willing to accept the presence of an anthropomorphic creator God will go to hell. He doesn't say that, no. Even the so-called unbelievers have a place in God's empire. Vivekananda sums up the essence of these teachings in one powerful sentence. He uttered this sentence almost 125 years ago. It is this: even if you don't believe in, it begins like this: you live your life in such a way that God will accept you even if you don't accept Him. You live your life in such a way that God will accept you even if you don't accept Him. So spirituality is not a verbal affirmation of the ontological existence of a creator God. Spirituality is actually living a life in such a way that we go deeper into our own true essence and we prepare ourselves to manifest the presence of the divine that is already there within us. But right now it is clouded. There's the sun. Maybe the sun is brilliant. It burns brilliantly. There's sunlight everywhere. But for some time, due to a thick patch of cloud, dark cloud, the sunlight may be blocked for a short time. It doesn't mean that the sun has disappeared or the sun is non-existent. Our ability to see the sun is gone for some time because of the dark cloud. Similarly, due to negative samskaras, the negative tendencies coming from endless life cycles in the past, what happens is this inner presence of the divine within us is not manifesting. So if we start doing good actions, we start practicing spiritual disciplines, love and compassion, looking upon the entire creation, not only human beings, entire creation as a spiritual family. Then what happens is the divine presence within us, it begins to manifest. That's why in the Vedic literature you find Dyo Shanti, Prithivi Shanti, Roshadaya Shanti, Vanaspataya Shanti. You can find in ancient Vedic scriptures, let there be peace and happiness and harmony in the clouds, in the oceans, in the rivers, in the forest, everywhere. Let there be peace everywhere. There be harmony everywhere. And this concept of harmony was called rhythm in ancient scriptures. Rhythm means this principle of inner harmony that keeps the universe, the creation, in a kind of spiritual balance. When we do something wrong, when we violate this inherent principle of harmony, we do something wrong, what happens is nature reacts. Nature reacts, human beings also react. If we cut down trees, for example, or if we go on constructing dams or rivers, what happens? There will be floods. Nature hits you back. Frequently people tell you have to protect nature. You will have to protect yourself from nature if you violate this existing balance within nature. Nature is able to take care of itself. Only you won't be able to take care of yourself. If there is tsunami, if there is global warming, humanity will suffer. So there is an existing inherent rhythm, what you call a kind of internal balance of harmony. When we live according to these principles of harmony with nature, with the principle of dharma, righteousness, what happens is we are living in, we are in good harmony with this nature. We are tuning ourselves into this harmony of nature. When we do something wrong, we are violating this internal harmony. And then nature also will react. This happens in human life. If you give bad food to your own mind, mind falls sick. Anxiety, neurosis, depression, all violent tendencies, campus violence, all these are results of toxic poison that we are eating every day. Not the physical level, mental level. We are very careful about the organic food, GMO-free, expiry date, everything okay. But there is no expiry date for mental food. No GMO-free. We cannot make it organic. So how to feed our mind with good organic food? Food that will give us a sense of harmony, peace, friendship. That's what is called organic food for the mind. So ideas that give us a sense of inner contentment, inner peace, inner harmony. Ideas that help us to look at entire humanity as one spiritual family. That's the spiritually organic food that we should try to feed our own mind with. That's what Shankaracharya says. So I have just given a bird view of some of the great, grand ideas of Shankaracharya. He is apparently the greatest name in Indian philosophical tradition, in Vedanta tradition. But along with all that, he also comes down to the common person, to the common man's level. He expounded the highest philosophy. He says, you don't have to go to a temple to be spiritual. You sit in your own home. You turn to yourself. You can feel the presence of the divine within your own being. The God you are praying to in a temple or a church, that God is within yourself. At the same time, he was going all over the country building temples. There is no contradiction. Why? Because you may have a book, a lesson, a book written by Einstein, you cannot teach in kindergarten children. Kindergarten children needs books prescribed for them. Primary school children needs books prescribed for them. So Shankaracharya, in a way, he built a huge university, spiritual university, where the highly exalted spiritual seekers can go for the highest Advaitic experience. But he also started a kindergarten. So from kindergarten to primary school to college to university, all that you find in Shankaracharya's philosophical system. Worship of the divine in temples and places. You pray to an image. I know many of you may be surprised why he went around building temples. That's where you start. Suppose, once I can narrate one incident in my own life. I used to go to universities in India before coming out of this country in 2012. So, India also has got don't think all Indians are Vedantins, are praying and meditating. No, you find more agnostics in India than even America, for your information. So when I address the youngsters, they sometimes ask this question, why do you pray in images, why do you are all these temples? So then I said, and then he says that we can pray, if God is present everywhere, why do we need all these temples, all this worship, all rituals? And he said, and he says that his parents in India, when 18-year-old, 19-year-old children will be asked to go to temples. Sometimes they may be suggested, so to speak, go to temples. And so they ask the question, why do my parents ask me to go to temples? God is present everywhere. Then I said, well, instead of going to temples, are you able to sit and meditate in your room, the presence of divine within you? Then you don't have to go to temples. But instead of going to temples, you're watching a thriller or reading a book which may not be necessarily the best spiritual food, the opposite of it maybe. In that case, better go to temples. So that's the idea behind. So the purpose of temples and image worship is to go beyond temples and image worship. The purpose of going to kindergarten, primary school, is one day to go to Oxford and Stanford or Harvard. You cannot directly, a child or 3 years old child cannot go to Harvard or Oxford. He has to go to kindergarten. Similarly, At the beginning of a spiritual life, we need some higher focus to turn our mind away from external worldly things. For that, we need a symbol. We need places of worship. We need rituals. For that, there are temples, churches, and other places everywhere. So, Shankaracharya says, we have to begin at the beginning of spiritual evolution. We have to start taking our mind away from worldly things and meditate on some symbol, some visible symbol. So, prathama pratima puja javastotrani madhyamaha uttama dhyana bhavasyad soham bhavottama. The highest level is, the Oxford or Stanford of spiritual evolution is to see God's presence in all of us and everywhere. But before that, you have to go to a kindergarten, a primary school. To learn the alphabet, you have to go to kindergarten. So before that, we may go to temples, but again we may do worship pujas, we may read scriptures. Eventually, we may reach the highest stage. But even after reaching the highest state, then also we don't just give up our worship or earlier practices. You know, if you are a professor teaching in a university, still you use the same alphabet that you picked up when you were a 3-year-old child in a kindergarten. You don't say, I don't need the alphabet. The same alphabet that you mastered as a 2-year-old child is used by a professor when he's writing a thesis, when he's teaching a lesson in the university. Similarly, one should not give up what one learned earlier, one should go beyond what one learned earlier. So, as I mentioned earlier, Shankaracharya's system is almost like a university, a college, primary school, and a kindergarten all rolled into one. Those of you who can, who want to know more about Shankaracharya and his contributions, I mean, some of the, if you don't have books, at least you can go to encyclopedias, Britannica, or you can read Dr. Radhakrishna's books. Dr. Radhakrishnan has written wonderful 2 volumes on Indian philosophy, volume 1, volume 2. Volume 2 deals with Shankaracharya. Of course, many of you may not know Sanskrit, but Vivekananda, Shankaracharya, T.M.B. Mahadevan, and innumerable Indian and Western scholars like Paul Deussen, the great German Indologist, Max Muller, and then MacDonald, Windenitz, innumerable European Indologists. Even in the United States, in the early part of this century, there's a great man called Paul Brunton who was highly impressed and influenced by Shankaracharya's philosophy. He was a British journalist who came to the United States and lived in New York, who came to know about Ramana Maharshi, took a ship to India, and that was the beginning of a new life, and he became a great Advaitin, a great exponent of the philosophy of Shankaracharya. So, another information I want to tell you, if you go to the northern parts of India, the Himalayan monasteries, in places like Rishikesh, Haridwar, in many places, there are a number of ancient monasteries in India. And when recently I returned from a monastery in Bahamas, Sivananda Yoga Center, so just a 3-4 days ago. If you go to India, in many of the monasteries, you find a large number of Europeans and Americans, different parts of the world, Westerners mostly, going around learning Sanskrit, learning Vedanta, with a long beard, with Rudraksha, Vibhu, all that you find. Sometimes they are much more Indian, they want to be more Indian than Indians. It's like Indians coming here, trying to pretend to be George Washington's nephews, try to be Americans more than Americans, you find. The same picture you find in India also, you find. So, Shankaracharya's philosophy is a global philosophy. It doesn't talk to you about any specific God. It talks about the presence of the divine within all of us. And try to realize. And then you find the whole world, the whole creation is one spiritual family. Your own family members, entire creation. It's a unique philosophy you can read later. Thank you, Namaskar. I give you just a brief bird view of this unique personality and also his contribution to not only spiritual psychology, but to in world culture as a whole. Thank you. Namaskar. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Rama Krishna Arpanamastu.
Ardhanga Ganga Tarange Yogi Mahayoga Karupa Raje Gauranga Ardhanga Ganga Tarange Yogi Mahayoga Karupa Raje Gauranga Ardhangam Baghachala Mundamala Shashipala Karatala Baghachala Mundamala Shashipala Karatala Kale Kadhimidimika Dimidamarubaje Tade Kadhimidimika Dimidamarubaje Gauranga Ardhanga Ganga Tarange Yogi Mahayoga Karupa Raje Gauranga Ardhangam Ambara Gandhara Digambara Jata Juta Ambara Gandhara Digambara Jata Juta Panidhara Bhujangeshwar Anga Vibhuti Chaje Panidhara Bhujangeshwar Anga Vibhuti Chaje Gauranga Ardhanga Ganga Tarange Yogi Mahayoga Karupa Raje Gauranga Ardhanga Vani Vilasatuya Tata Vidhata Vani Vilasatuya Tata Vidhata Jata Sakala Dukha Shada Shiva Viraje Jata Sakala Dukha Shada Shiva Viraje Gauranga Ardhanga Ganga Tarange Yogi Mahayoga Karupa Raje Gauranga Ardhanga Gauranga Ardhanga Gauranga Ardhanga
We have announcements now. There will be no Sunday lecture next Sunday, March 17, because of a special program on Saturday. So please remember, next Saturday, March 16th, a special worship will be performed in honor of Sri Ramakrishna's birthday at 10 o'clock in the morning in this auditorium. So remember, next Saturday, March 16th, is a very important day for us. A special worship will be performed in honor of Sri Ramakrishna's birthday at 10 a.m. in the morning in this auditorium. The program will also include chanting, meditation, devotional music, flower offerings by devotees, and a prasad luncheon. Childcare will be provided. After the worship program on Saturday, March 16th, we will have our annual general membership meeting at 2:30 in the auditorium in Vivekananda Hall. All members of our congregation who have been previously notified are earnestly requested to be present. Please remember, next Saturday, March 16th, we have two important programs. One, it is for the public, that is Sri Ramakrishna's birthday celebration worship at 10 a.m. in the morning in this auditorium. And this puja, the worship program, is for the public or for everyone. This program will also include chanting, meditation, devotional music, flower offerings by devotees, and a prasad luncheon. Childcare will be provided. Now another important program. After this, the worship program on Saturday, there will be a program meant for the members of the congregation of the Vedanta Society of Northern California. Who have been previously notified, they are earnestly requested to be present. That is, we will have annual general membership meeting at 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon in Vivekananda Hall. All members who have been previously notified are earnestly requested to be present. It will be at 2:30 p.m. You and your friends are cordially invited to attend all our services and worship programs. After the lecture, there will be a question and answer session in Vivekananda Hall, and all are welcome to attend these question and answers. And also some students who have come to discuss Hinduism, they can attend the question and answers session, and then afterwards they can remain there seated. After the question and answer session is over, we'll have discussion. Thank you. Namaskar. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Another piece of information. There will be no Sunday lecture I mentioned earlier. Next Sunday, March 17th, because of the puja program 16th. And on Sunday evenings, there is an online class at 6 p.m. on the foundation text of Indian philosophy. There will be no classes during March and April. So the next class on Indian philosophy, it's an online class, will resume on May 5th only. And remember, every Wednesday we have Vespers in this auditorium at 7:30 p.m. And also, our Friday evening class on Bhagavad Gita will remain suspended during March and April. The class will resume only on May the 3rd. Thank you. Namaskar.